Okay, hello everyone. Welcome to this today's episode, this evening's episode. The title is "What if definitions and symbols changed all the time?" And so I consider this just like a double-edged sword, a double-edged sentence. And so the implication of the title can be how definitions and symbols, they're changing at a certain speed, at a gradual speed, but in some sense, it can speed up. So the changing, like right now, whoever you are, wherever you are in the world, how the world is defined to you, the symbols you see in the world, the change of the subject, pretty much. Now, another way you can read the sentence. The title is "What if definitions and symbols changed all the time?" That means it's another step into time, one can say. Time is a symbol. Symbols are extensions of objects that are not in the outer realm. That's the fascinating thing. That means the meaning of what we see is not in the outer realms, it is in the inner realms. One can look at, like, let's say back in the day, you look at a buffalo, okay? You're looking at a buffalo. Now, that buffalo has no meaning. It's an animal irrelevant to you, but imagine during hunter-gatherer societies and whatnot, suddenly it had a meaning. The buffalo had a meaning for the human life. It was connected to the database of reality. You know, we can say something like that. We are practicing reality through our imagination, and we're practicing imagination through reality. You know. Who knew being on Earth is like the Navy SEALs training for a multidimensional being? For me, this is the where the inner realm begins, language. It took me a while. I was raised with my mother being closer to religious ideology and my father being closer to Sufi spiritual kind of ideology. And I remember, like from the from my youth, I had the idea of body, mind, soul. There was even a book on my house's bookshelf when I was really young. Body, mind, spirit. You know. Anyways, what I'm trying to say is that um, spirituality is easy to fathom. It's easy to fathom. In some sense, something has more dimensions to it. You know, the inner realms can add any image you want, even to that attempt to fathom what is more. But I would say that something that will, in some sense, passed me. In some, I would say it like I missed when I was young. I had an awareness to ideology focused on other worlds and ideology focused in this world. But I will tell you, it was the idea of language. I realize everything people are believing in is language. If they are to speak it, if they are to communicate it, that means an experience that one directly has, that's not something of belief. Do you know that means if you actually got on a ladder and changed the light bulb and came down the ladder, you don't have to believe the light bulb was changed. You changed it. Do you know? And so this is the thing that as long as there's belief and disbelief going on, there's a whack-a-mole of language hiding in some sense the reality of the nature of the world and how much it surpasses actually humanhood. You know, that means right now if an extraterrestrial out of nowhere landed on our planet and started talking to people, let's say the extraterrestrial somehow, let's say, I don't know, let's be fictitious here. Let's say the alien doesn't have a mouth, but it looks like a normal alien. It looks like human, but with a different color skin. Imagine, you know. Or let's make this even more comfortable, the metaphor. Let's say there's a light. Let's say that the first extraterrestrial beings that human beings made contact with, they're just light, spheres of light that just came on Earth. So pretty much let's say the leaders of humanity were shaking hands with spheres of light. And the sphere of life was like, okay, for you human beings, because you're such a cool species, I'm going to take a shape. Now, that shape would be like a similar language. It would be a language of existential design. If the alien looked like us, we wouldn't freak out. If the alien looked like something else, we'd be like, what are we looking at? For me, definitions and symbols, if they didn't change through experiential updates, direct experiential updates, in some sense, I would not be able to give another talk. I would not be able to talk. It's as if like they ask someone, "Who are you?" And imagine you say, I am this. I am person XYZ." You know, and so the moment you're person XYZ, you can't be anything else. That's the power that language has on the human being. It has an ability to make you into a statue to yourself, and years of life can pass by and you may not see beyond that language. And this life is strange. If you think of it too long term, you cannot, it's unknown. And if you just keep things in the short term, I know that there's human beings on this planet who are planning out their lives. They're actually enlisting the service of their intellect, you know for the future, for the battles of the future. But I would say, when it comes to non-dualism, there is an error. There is an error that is, in some sense, ignorance. What that means is, like, there are some systems in the past that were like flowers that grew then, and so those flowers do not grow now. And so if we are responding the same way as to how the flowers grew back then, we will never realize this moment of our life is not the same as our past. You see, the past, it's not just the past. It's like what was past was once upon a time your present. That means human beings actually have no past. We're just born and it's like present, present, present. I remember when I was young in school, the teacher would just call the names of the different student, and different students were like, present, you know? I'm pretty sure if Eckhart Tolle went through the same thing, he'd be like, I'm in the here and now. But I'm saying, like, there was a moment where I would remember when my name would be called, I'd be like, present, you know? But little did I know that the unknown witness is what is truly present, and everything else comes and goes. And this is the maturity, I would say, of returning to eyes unconditional. The world evokes in language. Language is used to hold the world. We gift wrap experiences and concepts. And this is the challenge, For me, this was the biggest thing, that in many religions there was a singularity. There was a singular source to all movement. This singular source to all movement renders the personality void. So I could say that these are kind of like the three ways I think human beings are alive. Either they are led by their self, either they are led by their world, or they remain as witness. Let's call it raw, RAW, remain as witness. So when you're raw, I'm gonna just type it here for those people who are regulars. Maybe commit this one to memory. The world is drawn, and if children are born into this world and they don't realize that there have been many painters before them who have painted the world and don't want their masterpieces to change, I will tell you, there's some people who live for the future because they want to see themselves there. And there's some people who live for the future because they want to see the future there. Their self is like a fragment, it's like a dust particle. you know when you remain as witness, you are actually being the presence of the whole moment. I would say I had an acquaintance with this in 2014. Even when I began these Mr. Within talks, my presence was my guide, not personality, subconscious personality fragments. That means anybody who considers that they're speaking to another being. I'll be honest, my honest opinion is that interdimensional communication is just ignorance of language, because we haven't realized that there's an instantaneity to how energy is being reality. You see, some things, yes, they require an explanation. Sometimes they require a certain way of digging the tunnel. But there's some things that are, it's like in the two-dimensional reality, you got to journey up the mountain. In the three-dimensional reality, you can teleport. Yeah, it's like the example in Flatlands. This was relayed by Carl Sagan, but somebody else had written it. It was this idea that imagine a two-dimensional world. Imagine a 2D world, and in this 2D world, there's only flat shapes. That means squares, circles, triangles. Okay? Or I'll make it easier. Let's say in a world of squares. That means imagine on a table, there's a bunch of two-dimensional squares living, and they're calling that Flatland, and everybody is a citizen of Flatland. Okay? Now envision that Mr. Within is taking a breather. Excuse me. So the two-dimensional squares on the table are like, yo, man, it's so boring in Flatland. What do we do? And out of nowhere, suddenly, somebody a three dimension who has access to three dimensions and beyond comes and puts a cube on a table. Can you imagine that? A cube on a table, and the table surface is Flatland. So all the two-dimensional beings see the square. They see the square of the cube, the square imprint that the cube is leaving on the two dimensions, but they don't see in how many other ways it is kept. And I am telling you, that is the unique poetic geometry of the soul, where the soul is a cube, the mind is a square, and your body is like the paper it's all written on. Yeah. you know? Excuse me, this was on mute and I was talking. Guys, something about language is that it's a simulation. It's simulated. You know, one thing I notice about the dictionary really is that too many people are worshiping it as an actuality, as if we could replace it. Really, you know, this whole universe so big we can't see its edge, but we creatures feel we can just say a few words, and that's our truth. You know, it's like you know, give the multidimensionality of the realm a break. Come on. And honestly, I'm telling you, there is a lot of animal programming. That means just because we find ourselves in an animal body, you know, embodied as a creature, doesn't mean necessarily we are just a creature, you know, in collective frameworks. I often think of it this way: wait a minute, things have to be in duality. I can't understand the concept of day without night. You know, I can't understand the concept of bad without good. Do you know? So these are codependent dualisms. And when it comes to the idea of self, we are all going about our day. Yeah, I'm just the self. You know, you know. But I feel there's a codependence in the sense that there's self and world. I feel we have two senses of being. We are being simultaneously the whole world, and we're simultaneously being ourself. And if we follow the desires of the individual, we miss out on the collective experience of our being. That is it. And this is why all the in a lot of mystical traditions, you pretty much, they're like, hey, don't touch materiality, you know, don't don't step into the simulation, you know. For me, like a yogi, a mystic is like pretty much the truth of the universe has put its child in a sandbox and is watching its child play, you know. That's it. It's a level of ignorance being watched. It's a level of individual ignorance being witnessed by a level of collective clarity. The collective clarity is timeless, and that's the hilarious thing. As long as there's time, there's gonna be individual stories. As long as there's gonna be individual stories, a person's in history is gonna get bored and want to rule everything. So, in some sense, we either evolve beyond language or we break inside it. And let me tell you, it's tragic to be in a building that is falling apart and not running outside of it. To run out of the building of thoughts that dwell. There is a story that every time I share it, it gives me goosebumps. It is such a profound story because I know it is like a cliff I will get ready to jump from one day. And what I mean by that is an inner cliff. For me, I look at matter from a distance, from an inner distance, believe it or not. That means imagine like a person being really close up by a tree. Now imagine someone who is really close up by a tree, but in their mind they are like 100 meters away from the tree. I will tell you, it is important to practice letting go of the idea of yourself, because that is how the end seems to be walking our way. You know, reality is like that. What that means is time is not cruel. The world is like this. You know, I have gotten angry at people, I've gotten angry at myself, and in both cases I was like, yo, I'm getting angry at just some creature on a world. What's the big deal? You know? Sometimes I mean, here's the thing. It's like if you're comfortable with absence, then you really feel grateful when things happen. You know, if you're someone who hasn't experienced something for a long time and you suddenly experience it, it becomes um, I don't know. Pretty much we worshipped objects, we worship subjects, and we're still worshiping subjects, you know. All those people who have some sort of piece of paper on the wall, you know, stop worshiping yourself. You know, pretty much, let me tell you, I feel this is what's going on. I feel that I'm a person in this life who was sold on language. I was sold, language was sold to me. Language was sold to me that did not correlate direct experiences of life, indirect language. So life became a situation where I was like, what do I do with what the patterns and systems that have been introduced to me, you know? And really, unless your imagination plays with the concept of time, you do not give yourself a freedom for identity. I'm telling you, there's something about this world that you have to, on an inner way, just accept that it's okay to be simple. And then the complex dimensions of life can be noticed. Anytime, and life really tells you. I mean, that's the whole point of karma, you know? That means some people say, excuse my language, but some people say karma is a bitch, for example. And I feel it's like anytime your hand goes off the steering wheel of your life and the moment goes into turbulence. I feel karma is how the world is communicating through the self. That means we have been under the impression that it's only sensory perception, that stuff from inside is hitting us. But what if we were in the middle of two worlds, an inner and outer realm? And as much as there were outer realm influences like the wind hitting you or it raining and raindrops hitting your head or something, that's outer realm influence, I would say your inner realm influence would be like when the raindrops hit your head, how you feel. For me, sometimes my emotions are I feel they're like the drivers. They are the drivers of the moment. They don't come out because they're driving. It's like the bus driver doesn't have time to enjoy the ride. Technically, if the bus driver has a sort of route to go. If the bus driver has done the bus ride so many times, that means imagine like you were a being that had communicated for eons. You know, after a point, communication is becomes easy for you, regardless of what way you manifest. Whether you were teleported into a dimension where you were just a geometrical shape and you had to experience your vitality that way, or if you were, in some sense, just, I don't know, there's something about the fear of change that once you cross that bridge, uh, the joy of the world can become your teacher. I remember I sometimes I have this habit. I've had it as a kid where I would go open books randomly. I would think of something and I would open books randomly. And it was yesterday I opened a poem, just a poem I had written a while back, and in it there were these two lines where it said, uh, "Be free, absolutely. Why else are you here?" And I can't tell you how important it is to become an ally of how your mind is living. You know, a person can get dragged by their mind, or a person can sit down and poetically have a cup of tea with the intelligence of their moment. You know, that means something that it doesn't matter how empty your pockets are, it doesn't matter what kind of crown is on your head. You know, it's just like after some point, it's like the breath, the sound of your breath, you know, and just the presence of attention are enough. That means if all dimensions of culture and society remain inefficient, the efficiency has to come from another way. Pretty much the lion will roar regardless. That's what I'm saying. That we are the efforts of nature this far, and we have dared make history. It's beautiful, but at the same time, it's like sometimes when I feel sorry for myself, I realize I'm feeling sorry for my world. You know, And that moment when a person feels sorry for the world, the unknown comes. I will tell you, when there is no effort in you left, that's when the unknown visits. That means when you go all out, and then there's this silence. That silence is where the unknown comes, the reality of the unknown. Through the silence of no longer trying to write on a book already written. We may be treating life as a notebook, right? But it could be a book. It could be that everything is right here, just like how all the materials for an invention are there in the world. I can say they're the same way. All knowledge is here in the world. Knowledge was never inside us. We're not here to be USBs that fill up with bits of information. You know, the brain is an explorer and it's an inventor. And the idea of invention means you're trying to you're noticing something no one has noticed. You're looking at the way where the most simple things can reconnect to be something they have never been before. You know. And as Albert Einstein defines it, I don't remember the sentence exactly, but the quote exactly, but it was something like, anybody who connects two worlds that have never been connected before is pretty much a genius. That means it's so easy to be a genius. You just have to not be afraid for how the past will feel if you deserve to feel something new in the future. And it's way more complex. That means there is, I would say, I have found more liberation in the, like, I don't know, it's like, when I was really young, it was just an incredible sports-centric life. And then it became like inner sports. There was a point where it was nice kicking like a soccer ball to a crossbar precisely. That was like a sort of fun. Now it is more like trying to see the mysteries of the modern man. You see, for me, it is sure, you can say everybody is chasing a ball in some game. Everybody has some sort of objective and goal of surviving to see what happens here. Even though a person could say, I am the embodiment of pure love. And you can totally be God here. That's what Vedanta is. They asked Swami Krishnananda, what is religion? He's like, God remembering himself. That means it's not an achievement to remember what you already are being. It's an achievement in a civilization conditioned through ignorance to remember what you are being, then bring the new. Open the doors for the new. Imagine, I would tell you this, imagine there is endless inventions just knocking on a door, and people just have to open these doors. They just have to trust the evolution of not just the creature in the moment where the creature has become. To trust your presence is authority. That means if you're a being on this planet and you want to experience power, like they don't even the media today, they don't even teach power properly. It's all taking. We have this idea that selfishness and control is power. That is the most. It's, first of all, it's not power. Anything you control, you are controlled by simultaneously. Do you know? That means the whole psychology of the controller and the controlled is that they are bound. The psychology of the submissive and the dominant is that they are bound. That means neither are free. That means, in some sense, this is a very heavy conversation. I personally don't like to tread these heavy waters, but I'd say, for example, in ancient times, there was the idea of slavery. Do you know? And it was as if the slave and the person who was a slave, in some sense, imagine like you were a slave and there was a slave owner. That slave owner, in some sense, limited you, but you limited the life of that slave owner. Do you see? In the same way that their attention had to endlessly remain on what they control. So their technically selfish power is the same consequence as what that selfish power is being used on. Do you know? But if there was a true introduction of power, there's two angles. Either it's victorious power or it is defeated power. If it's a power that's attaining its, you can say, victory by making the world less, that means it's so easy to be cruel. It's too easy. It's like it's the easiest thing. I would say to live as a mind on this earth is the challenge. Everybody can live as a body. Just go in a forest and don't behave like a human being for a while, then run with the animals, and you'll realize how easy it is to be an animal on this planet. You know, but it is now the elegance of consciously living as minds. You know, that's the joy of the era we're in. You know, that means it is too easy to make the house of cards fall. You just blow on it and it falls. But to develop the house of cards and to create a system that the future generations honor what the past did, try to use it and be like, okay, our ancestors did some sort of research project. Okay, now we have to do our own. You know, the educational system failed when students became students and stopped being explorers that would surpass the teacher. That's it. The educational system failed when it made the human being forget the power of knowledge. That means, I'll give you an example. Imagine you're in a mansion and there's so many different rooms, okay? Now imagine in one room you controlled everything and became God. You're like, oh man, I'm God, everybody. This is my room, but you don't know what the other rooms hold. Do you see? You don't know what the other rooms hold. It doesn't matter even if you entertain some sort of hilarious extraterrestrial, agency even. That extraterrestrial agency, if it has a body, it still doesn't even know. You know? The unknown surpasses meaning created by something that is an effect of a mysterious cause. You know, to build an advanced civilization is just a few chess moves away. Every human being has climbed the mountain in their own way so far. The type of knowledge that's being taught is in some sense a knowledge that is making the person forget that their teachings have been how their eyes have witnessed the world so far. That means for me, I don't play this game of student teacher because in some sense the eyes are learning from everything in the world. That means any teacher that has spoken, I have also learned from the silence where they're in. And it is true in the mystical mindset we have poets of the likes of Hafiz. Hafiz says, lower the volume. Hafiz says, how do I listen to others? As if everyone is my cherished master, as if everyone is my master, telling me their last. Sorry, guys, I got that. Let me remember this. How do I listen to others? As if everyone is my master, giving me, sharing with me. Sorry, guys, hold on. I gotta find this. There we go. Hafez says, how do I listen to others? As if everyone were my master speaking to me his cherished last words. Let us say, um, or let's consider that the brain is sandwiched between an unknown world and an unknown self, the inner and outer realms. The brain seems to be also allowing the access to the landscape of world, you know. And now we know that the brain generates, the brain is doing something. The brain is not like a chunk of rock not moving, it's moving, right? So because the brain is moving, now it tells us like two angles of it. What happens if the brain's, let's say the neural movement advances. Let's say they connect somebody's brain to cyberspace, and so imagine like you're like the first person, their head getting connected to cyberspace, and usually there is casualties in wars of innovation as well. And so imagine the first person whose head connected to cyberspace, they found the proper technology to connect it, but it was so much information that the person couldn't process. You know? I feel connecting computers to the human brain is gonna feel like possession. It's gonna feel either we are possessed by some force beyond our will, or it's gonna feel in some sense we are possessing a force beyond its will. So it's gonna be God or nothing. So the neurons would fry. The person's brain would pretty much overload and would be damaged. It would be like too much voltage for the inner realms, you know. I would say, sorry, too much voltage for the outer realms, for the actual brain. Now the other option is, so brain accelerates whatever the brain is doing, whatever activity this moment of living is. This can either accelerate or it can come to a still point, right? So in the mystical angle and the yogic angle, they would bring the mind to a still point, hence the term, you could say, meditation on single pointedness of mind. You see, it's as if before you actually meditate, you have to look at the world. You know, so anything you do that you don't understand why you're doing, you're not gonna intake. You know, that means for me, I only learn when something that I go towards is answering a sort of ultimate question in my mind, a question of my soul. You know, that's what I remember. Because that which is important, uh, becomes the journey. So the mind is generating definitions, and definitions are symbols pretty much. A network of symbology that is trying to accurately represent the outer realms, network of inner realm symbols. So the brain is generating knowledge in every moment, and so we can speed up our knowing and we can slow it down. And the cool thing is, it goes back to the unknown. That's why I'm saying it's sandwiched between the brain is sandwiched between an unknown world and unknown self. In the inner realms, you come to the mystery of your presence. In the outer realms, you come to the mystery of your personality and how there was a sort of evolutionary movement. Do you see? Like, imagine 4.5 billion years of evolution was in some sense fast forwarded. You were watching it on a TV screen and it fast forwarded. You would just see creatures have just lifted. It's as if the sun's light has pulled out life forms out of this giant spherical form, you know? And because there's so many different types of substances, in some sense it renders individual truth void. That means it's this very, very strange thing where we have developed a sort of scientific methodology in advancing the civilization through, I would say, fixed classification. That means there are constants that cannot be changed in science. If they are to change, they change everything. So what that means is science is literally taking a photo of the world, looking at it, comparing it to other photos, and then in the future taking another photo, comparing that photo, and endlessly up trying to guess the film that way, right? Religion just took one photo and it's like, okay, it's all this. Science keeps taking new photos of the world, but the scientific method, but the religious method is just like one photo, good enough. It's like one revelation is all we need. So, do you see what I mean? I'm saying, like, but the mystic is tired of this snapshot game. Of this snapshot is, oh, I thought the world was this. Tomorrow I awoke and saw it was different. It's like, okay, yeah, every day we're getting surprised by how the inner realms and outer realms are not 100% in sync. And guess what? Your synchronicities, the Jungian synchronicities, the explanation for them is because when your inner realms become selfless, they sync up with the outer realms more. There's less differentiation with them. You know what I mean by that? That means anytime you have less of an opinion on yourself and more an opinion on the world, you become the opinion of the world. Do you know? But if you have an opinion on yourself, but you don't have an opinion on the world, do you see? It's like the mind chooses which layer of the onion of consciousness. The concentric spherical relationship of consciousness. For me, I have studied it in my own eyes, in the way where I've studied how I'm an object and I'm projecting. My mind is a projector. Literally, my biology is projecting my psychology, right? I've experienced this. But I have also, in dream states, been conscious and experienced my psychology in itself, in the inner realms, create a body. So anybody who in a dream state or whatnot is aware of themselves, they have free will in their dreams. Technically, you don't have free will. You're a mind that could change the film. And it's very instructional. That means I would say something that probably no person in the New Age community ever expected to hear. Practice communication in altered states of communication. sorry, altered states of mind, altered states of me. That means trust enough to interact with the new. You see, because language and definitions and symbols, they change, you know? That means I say, what if definitions and symbols change all the time, but every day we wake up, it's literally everything's changed. It's like the water of the shore, the water has kind of like, of the sea has like washed the sands on shore, you know? Whatever was written on the sands, the waves have cleared it. So every day I wake up, it's as if like I in some sense don't keep the past there. The past has been done. The past should be treated like a toolbox. It shouldn't be worshipped. And no, I am against systems that manipulate the person by using their past. Let me tell you what I mean by that. You have an option to be present. You have an option to have your attention on the future. You have an option to go into the future, but your attention is on the past. There are some schools of thought that they want to just reverse engineer the person back into some sort of truth, But not if you. I would tell you, like, do you know? I would say it like this. It doesn't help you if you are the tip of an iceberg to know your past. To know, to even if you think, like, let's say the person's like, oh, in Zen they had this thing where they would say, kill the Buddha. And it's something the Zen teachers would say. And what did they mean? They didn't mean like kill the Buddha. They meant they meant like the Zen disciple would sit down and meditate and suddenly remember themselves as Buddha. Be like, oh my God, I was Buddha in a past life. So there seemed to be this phenomenon of a lot of Zen disciples, all of them feeling they were Buddha in a past life. So the Zen master would come to the Zen disciple and would say, kill the Buddha, you're not the Buddha, man. Get rid of let the idea that has come go on its own. Do not hold onto the idea. That means you need to have higher dimensional contentment. That means if you have contentment with your mind, it's easy to live as a body. If you have contentment with the pure unknown, the soul, then it's very easy to live as a mind. Now, what requires to happen in the moment when the person becomes selfless is strange, because it's like an antenna without any reason, any desire to express. So you become a receiver. So I could say it's like, think of it like our phones have airplane mode, and they have like the regular mode, non-airplane mode. You can receive the world. And you can express in the world. I feel reception is done non-dualistically, expression is dualistic. For me, it's strange. It's like speaking in a world where energy doesn't have a personality is like pretty much art. Who knew speech is art? Okay, guys, there's this song called "Music of Forgotten Cathedrals." Okay, let's see what this is. First time, let's hear. Oh wait, these are soundtracks. So hold on. Okay. Pretty much, um, we're required to be responsible for how an object is. We need to be comfortable piloting the outer realms. Once the outer realms are no longer turbulent, that dimension is piloted. Then it becomes very easy to pilot in your inner realms. The inner realms can be accessed. You can literally experience yourself as a mind. I established a sort of relationship where when I say inner realms, it's like poetically, it's like an office I can go into anytime. That means I could be anywhere in the world and I could just stop doing anything, just sit down and close my eyes and start moving as image in my inner realms. So you can say like taking one step in the outer realms is like that's one step. Taking one step in the inner realms is leaping through images. So it's like echo. It's waving through images. So some people in the New Age sense interpret it as kind of like I don't know, downloads from beyond the veil. But I would say it's more like you are going through. It's kind of like maybe like how this what do you call it? The sonar of a bat. Like a bat kind of makes noise, like they can't see, so they make noise, and the waves, the sound waves that come back, give them an ability to coordinate in space. So literally, if somebody like starts singing opera in a cave of bats, all the bats are probably gonna hit the walls or whatever. Who knew? You gotta combat bats with singing, you know. If Joker only knew this, you know. I'm really trying hard not to say the reality is like building blocks, like Lego, but it is with image. I feel even a system can be created that we look at. Excuse me. We can create the system that any objective moment, any snapshot photo of the world, or some small footage of the world, we can consider how many subjective dimensions it has. That means if you, let's say, have a camera close up on a table and you have like a ruler, a coffee cup, and a phone on the table, right? And so you only see the ruler, coffee cup, and the phone and the table. So technically, we can say in how we can translate that moment, that picture has four subjective dimensions. Four subjects exist in that picture. Do you know? That means any moment you could look at something and ask yourself how many subjects are there, how many objects are there, you know? And pretty much we explore the outer realms until we notice the inner realms. We explore the inner realms until we notice the new outer realms. We explore that new outer realms, you know, suddenly notice there's a new inner realm. So when we go into the new inner realms, we suddenly realize that after some point, then there comes the idea in Zen, they would say, where climb the mountain by starting at the top. That means everything in this life, as much as karma is something being directed towards the individual is also directing themselves towards their karma. This is why there is, in some sense, science. There is conscience. Conscience is like, in the Abrahamic sense, they saw an angel and what was it, angel and a devil, like on the shoulder of the person, like as if this sort of moral attractor, as if like two worlds each attracting a sort of consequence. But I would say conscience is like just a hidden antenna. It's like an inner response. That means people maybe right now, because we're treating the outer realms as not alive, we're not realizing we can treat the inner realms as alive. Why? Because we are alive. Think about what the brain is doing. The brain is copy pasting that which appears to it as inanimate, and the moment it copy pastes it, it becomes animate in where the brain is. So I would say we are alive and we bring things into our life field and they become alive for us, you know. So for example, a child, let's say, playing with a teddy bear, and that teddy bear becomes the child's best friend or something. Do you know that's the child, that teddy bear, that object is in the child's life field? Do you know? The conscious presence of that child is imbuing life to the object, you know. And so this is where I would say that's the fascination. This is the cool thing, that this world could be a simulation. You know, that means I say, you know, that we got to build an advanced civilization, and I'm pretty sure there's some yogis on mountaintops. They're like, yo, you know, what's the point of building in a simulation? And I would tell you that if it's not just what we build, it's how we build it. Right now, we have progress, but the progress is not in how we make it. You know, like it's like, I don't know how to say it, but it's like the way you go about doing something suggests the spirit you imbued to the moment. You know, pretty much what from within you gave to that. And technically, Albert Einstein, when he said genius is two worlds connecting that have nothing to do with one another, that's what exploration is. That means the genius is the explorer. There's no other genius. They are synonyms. And you know, like, you can even look at this picture I chose. This picture was way too unique not to share, and I have no idea who the artist is. Whoever knows, give a shout out. This person saw fish, probably in a pond, and then walked up through trees, and then imagined what if giant fish were like hovering in the air between the trees. So the micro and the macro were linked in this picture, technically rendering this a genius artwork. This artwork should be in a museum. So, what's the point of 8 billion explorers? Let's say we built the advanced civilization. That's step one. Pretty much the most basic thing we gotta do on this planet. The only great game we can play on this planet. For me, there was something insightful from Chung Tzu I learned. Chung Tzu, he said, thoughts come and go. They're like leaves on a tree. They change as the seasons pass. So when you realize there is change, that's when really style becomes relevant. And style becomes how you're conscious of how the world and how yourself in the world is changing. I would say there is no such thing as a person has one style. It's impossible to change it. I remember when I was in uh, school, there was a big deal about being the idea of being cool or whatever, and it was like this idea. It was this idea. It's like, hey, everything, the whole universe is cool. It's been cooling down since the Big Bang. It doesn't get cooler than this. I feel there will be in the future, maybe in cyberspace, the archaic revival, because in our outer realms, the concept of kingdoms, like uh, I personally don't mind that idea. I don't mind the idea of like knights back in the day. That there was some sort of honor system in place, a sort of human elevation, system. And I feel in cyberspace we're going to relive. I feel it's going to be cyberspace is going to make us be able to live in history. We're going to reanimate our history. That means little do directors know that in the future we are going to be actually trying to do a sort of archaeological revival of history. We're gonna live in our history when cyberspace comes, and we're also gonna live in the edge of our imagination. So we can actually imagine. We imagine human beings, extraterrestrials don't come down to Earth, and we create cyberspace, and we create so many like close to real life, like cyberspace level. We create this virtual realm where there's aliens there, really life-looking aliens. Let's say this gaming company makes this next level video game where it's like alien. The video game is called Alien Contact, imagine, and it's like pretty much. So I'm just saying, in that game, imagine human beings got so introduced to aliens. When aliens came down to Earth, we were bored. We were like, "Yo, man, we've seen this in cyberspace so many times." I honestly feel there's only a 5,000-year gap that extraterrestrials can actually come and interact with individual humans, right? Because the energetic remembrance of you can say, like, there was this gentleman named a scholar named Rupert Sheldrake, and Rupert Sheldrake, he in some sense talked about morphic fields being habits of the planet, memories of the planet. As if when one strange natural event happens, it's as if the world has remembered something in a unique way. So it's kind of like the planet is addicted to the rise and fall of civilization. It's like, yo, planet, why are you doing this? You know, the planet's like, I can't stop. I just gotta keep creating generations of creatures that evolve and then return to the world. And at that point, we'd be like, oh my god, somebody find a god to calm down the planet. It's just the effort of the human being. There is no human being can be compared to another human being because the DNAs are different. This means that there is nothing on this planet that two people can 100% agree on. I feel this. That means, in some sense, like there is, I would say, like our eyes are so deep and so different, and every attention has journeyed something. Like if you were a yogi and I was like opening up to the mystical dimension, that would technically mean you are surpassing your universal memory. So no longer there's a fascination with the extraterrestrial or the galactic drama, you know. So in some sense, you in some sense realize you are not just the witness of a self in a universe. You are the witness of all the universes in this self. And you know, this is what society needs. You see, if you look at this picture I've chosen, look at how that person is sitting down. You see the simple-minded, the grace, the gracefulness of just watching the world, watching nature go about its day. You know, it's such a cool feeling to actually coexist with nature. You know, we have lost this feeling, you know, and we have boxed ourselves in beliefs that were never human, that were never for a human. I'm telling you, it's like there are some things in this world, some ideological systems. I just look at from a distance, and I'm like, what the fuck? Like there's. We gotta grow with our world. I think that's the biggest lesson of a collective. When you're individual, you want to be the world. When you are already being the world, you want to come back into the world, you know. There was this Sufi story. There was this man who he lived for 70 years, and he's like, I've lived a great life, you know, everything's perfect, you know. Then suddenly, after 70 years, he transitions, he dies, and he suddenly realizes he was alive. Imagine living 70 years and not realizing you're alive. You know, and that life doesn't mean the past was like, good boy, and it's clapped for you. Do you know, it means how much you allowed the futures not to be disturbed, you know. That means one thing that I deep down got a feeling was like an effort, as if this whole world, there's a language war. And what is this language world? The past is trying to occupy the energy of the future. This is the language war, but through structure, ideological structure. And it's this weird situation where we can't get rid of the past because it's so intimate. So many people's lives are there. You connect, their meaning comes from past systems. But at the same time, we can't get rid of the past, and at the same time, we can't allow the past to occupy the future, right? So we have no choice but to simulate two dimensions and be like, okay, past, you don't want to change, all right, you know, and then the future has a free room to work on, you know. That means imagine the past and future were both your children, you know. It's as if you would get them two separate rooms. You know, that would be their gift. So for me, this is why I'm saying civilization 2.0. It doesn't mean necessarily we gotta change the past. The past may never change. And when I say the past, guys, I mean ideological systems from the past that have endured and are influencing our modern culture currently. Our modern global developing culture. Hopefully. There are truths that surpass humanhood, and there are truths that don't surpass humanhood. Truths that surpass humanhood, they are inconceivable. So you cannot see them. You can notice them by how you're in conception in the moment. You can just notice just like you can look at space and see something, its potential to be full. You could look at something full and see its potential to be space. You could look at, at just an inanimate object and suddenly notice you are its potential of being animate, and that's why we stretch in the morning when we wake up. And I would say this: trust the past, but trust your future first. And it's honestly honorable, multidimensional communication. Right? That means you don't impose image. That means imagine there was a voice. I'll tell you something hilarious. This happened when I was at a cottage, and I have various moments in my life where randomly I've just felt out of nowhere, like in the most meaningless moments. Not meaningless, but in like in the most, like I've just been called towards to grab a pen and start writing, whatever. Just watching myself write out an emotion. And there was a moment where it was this poetic sort of inner dialogue with the logos, and I felt like for a moment it's like the logos was me, and I felt like I was like my own soul was saying something. But then, in literally, it was as if in how I, in some sense, I don't know how to say it. It's like imagine a being in another dimension is standing right where you are, and you think that you are them, and they're like, "I'm not you." Life goes forth. I want to go into a quote tunnel of a man named Kabir, this mystic in India. Here we go. Kabir says, "More than all else do I cherish at heart that love which makes me to live a limitless life in this world." Kabir says, "Man's sins are the work of his heart." Oh my god. Oh my god. Oh my god. Kabir says, "Man concealeth all the sins he committeth, but at last they are all disclosed." Kabir says, "If I say he is..." Oh my god, I clicked on a different page. Okay, maybe that's let me read another website, guys. Hold on. Let me find another website. Or actually what I'm going to say. Kabir says, if I say he is one, it is a lie. If I say he is two, I am guilty of slander. Kabir knows him as he is, but cannot express him. The devotee who can stay in that place where the invisible and the manifest are one, like a lamp in the doorway, illumines both what is within and what is without. As a piece of cloth is not different from the threads which comprise it, so Brahman is not different from the world, and the world is not different from Brahman. Kabir, there is no difference between the world, the creator, and Brahman. Brahman is in all, and all is in Brahman. The fire is one whether it burns in a lamp or a torch. So Brahman is all, and in him exist all souls, God and the world. Unity is the essence of the teachings of all the saints. Laugh at Kabir if you do not become perfect by living in accord with this truth. We can't laugh at Kabir, guys, because we technically be laughing at ourselves if we abided by this truth, you know? This is why Kabir's genius. Kabir says, there, what form or shape is there to describe? What second, what, in quotations, other is there to see? In the beginning there is no Om or Veda. Who can trace his birth? There no sky exists, no moon or sun, no father's seat, no air, fire, water, or earth. Who can name him or know his will? Who can say from whence he comes? Remembering the void, the simple one, a light bursts forth within me. I offer myself to that existence who is non-existence. So Kabir, guys, this is very important. He says, remembering the void. So Kabir went into his own non-existence, his experience reverse engineered back into prior to the linguistic simulation. Then he says the simple one. He found the one truth, the one how energy is chilling everywhere, you know, beyond personality. The simple one. A light bursts forth within me. And then he says, I offer myself to that existence whose non-existence. Mr. Within would just say, instead of offering yourself, pilot consciously. That is the greatest offering. You know, that means it's like in some sense, you actually treating the moment in the realest way the eyes know. There's no greater honor than that. Usually, if you stay honest, you maintain honor. Kabir says, oh scholars, you are mistaken. There's no creation or creation there in the experience of unity. There's no radiant form, no time, no word, no flesh or faith, no cause or effect or even a thought of the Vedas. There's no Hari or Brahman, no Shiva or Shakti, no pilgrimages or rituals. There is no mother, no father, no guru. Think, is it two or is it one? Kabir says, if you understand this, you're the teacher and I'm the disciple. What he means is that it's like they're the same. It's like it's pretty much like Kabir's trying to bring to the attention of the reader that what is spontaneously arising subjective motivation behind the eyes of people to move in the outer realms is the same source. It's another way of saying, like, there's this story of a bunch of fish, these educated fish, incredibly intellectual fish. Yet they are so intellectual to know that, okay, their intellect is not enough. So they go to this wiser, sage, mystic of a fish, you know? This mystical fish. This fish just sitting underneath a coral reef, just its eyes closed and just like meditating, you know? And so suddenly these intellectual younger fish, they go to this older yogi fish and they say, what is God? What is this truth? Like, what is this truth we're looking for here? And the fish says, the wiser fish suddenly says, "What do you think for so far the truth is?" And all the intellectual fish are like, "Okay, so right here now, let us just open up, unfold the table of knowledge." Yeah. And so the intellect says, the younger fish say, we are considering that God or truth is power. And because truth is power, we look at ourselves at our power level and we're considering truth has to be beyond this power level. Do you know? It has to be beyond the power of beyond. Like if we are a fish, it's like pretty much they're saying, the younger fish are saying that they think God is a bigger fish, like a whale or something. They're like, if it's like an extraterrestrial of great ability, or you know what I mean, like some sort of analogy where it's like a bigger fish, right? So this sage says you are wrong. This fish says that in some sense it is like the ocean, and that it's within everyone. It is keeping everything. Its currents move us. Do you know we can also move and create currents in the system as well? So pretty much it's as if truth stopped becoming a bigger fish and it became the ocean, and the ocean cannot be spoken about. It is like it is holding the fish. Do you know? It's like a goldfish in a bowl speaking about like outer space. And we're like, all right, calm down there, goldfish. But pretty much the moral of it is that it's living, it's life beyond form, and our truths are form based. That's why we call ourselves life forms. So, anyways, let's go on with the code tunnel. Kabir says, Rama has possessed me, Hari has enchanted me, all my doubts have flown like migratory birds in winter. When I was mad with pride, the beloved did not speak to me, but when I put on the robe of humility, the master opened my inner eye. Dyeing every pore of my body in the color of love, drinking the elixir from the cup of my emptied heart, I slept on his bed in divine ecstasy. These are, guys, metaphors. He means he experienced the inseparability of his ego with his world, with the world soul, in a way. The devotee meets Hari as gold meets a gold solvent. The pure heart melts into its lord. And that technically means the iceberg that is doubting the ocean dissolves into the ocean. So technically, on an energetic level, we are one being. On a physical level, we have separate bodies, you know, in that density. And, that means it's like from one imagine the consciousness is the center of a circle, and in one angle we see, like in 190-degree angle, we see like the biological body. We see how we're a physical separate physical form. But from another angle, from another 90-degree angle, it would be, for example, how we are seeing ourselves as a mind. So this point has endless lines going through it, I would say. So we can say a world is a singular idea, a changing world is a dualistic and beyond. That means we can have infinite change, infinite types of change, or we could just have one reverse kind of change. Imagine person A is in the park, person B comes to person A, and it's like, person A, what's your belief? You know? And person A looks at person B and says that in some sense there is no belief. There is just attention moving. That is life. That's the mind's life. It's the presence of attention. And this presence of attention can animate as a personality that doubts nature. It can animate as a personality that is nature. That was true pretty much. It can animate as a personality that is watching nature. That means it was like in the reading detail, there was an intense sentence, and it was like the liberated being, the liberated yogi sees his body like he sees another. What that means is you kind of get this third person awareness of your own being. And when you function that way, there isn't the immediate fear of the first person point of view, you know. You see, right now, culture, civilization is in expressive mode. We're like, think of it this way: unconscious inactivity. There's a level of unconscious inactivity. Then we went from unconscious inactivity to unconscious activity. Then from unconscious activity, we went to conscious activity. Then from unconscious, I'll say that again. From unconscious inactivity, we went to unconscious activity. Oh my God, I'll try it again. From a state of unconscious inactivity, we went to a state of unconscious activity. Now we went from a state of unconscious activity to a state of conscious inactivity. And then from a state of conscious inactivity, we're going to conscious activity. Conscious activity technically means, like, right now we feel more as an object than a subject. In the future, we're probably going to feel way more. The subject is going to feel, we're going to feel like we have endless bodies. That's pretty much what's going to happen. We're like, think of it this way: every person is literally a moment of attention, being responsible for like a part of the earth. You are like a part of this world. Everybody's like a part of nature, you know. Unless you're an android listening to me, and then that would be a different talk. Your nature is to just discover the program, just to copy the program. Free yourself from every idea you have ever known with the simple realization that every new thing that you know realigns everything else that was known before. That is the cool thing about experience. When you experience something, you can never un-experience. You know, it's like Until Time Machines or something. Imagine a time machine that had an option where mid-time travel, they would also do the Men in Black kind of forgetfulness thing. So you'd forget the experience ever happened. But I feel the brain is literally like, I feel we are higher dimensional surveillance creatures, honestly. Like, on some level, when I think about it, like, there's no reason for existence, because it's a sphere in the middle of nowhere. The reason is just agreement in regards to outcome. It depends on what you want, you know. And the issue with reason is that the variables are limited. That means you can sit in one moment and try to reason everything out, and still there's variables that you don't even know about. So when one sees there's the unknown, is literally there's a greater than sign towards the unknown than the known. the unknown is greater than the known, that's when really exploration and ability and your own experience as a presence becomes interesting for you. And that's when definitions and symbols not don't change all the time. You realize time is a changing definition, it's a changing idea for you. We have to constantly remind ourselves, like, we weren't born with our wrists like biologically looking like a clock. You know, we weren't born with watches on. You know, you know. So what does that say about time? It's artwork. That means technically, I've seen a lot of theist and atheist debates, and I'm like, oh man, look at how foolish kids can be. And it's all just a battle of which language is proper to remain. Because ideas, any ideological system has a skeletal design structure. I am telling you, every idea, every word points to an image. Every image points to a geometry. If you can somehow take the color out and notice the space and the shape, or you take the shape out and notice the space and the color, you know, it's like there's various ways. Or there's one other angle you can also move that trial. So anyways, guys, thanks for listening. Your inner realms are your birthright. Your mind is, nobody knows like what kind of being you are. So on some level, it's like nobody has your eyes, so you're the only one who can study or find out your own the truths that come from within. You know, and a question that roars from the inner realms into the outer realms, usually there's something profound behind it. It's not enough just freedom. We don't want to be free but then suffer. So our freedom has to, in some sense, be like, we have to respond to the world, you know? Like, we can't have everybody just sit down and do nothing and feel like they're, you know, everything, you know? There needs to be new architecture, pretty much. Literally, design schools should be geometry is the great ally of man when it comes to how the future arrives. You know, I would say poetically, like, the logos for me is it's like a wind that geometrically animates. And everything has design. I feel everybody is a master designer. People just, it's in your unconscious. Because think of how many types of lines and images your eyes have seen from the moment you were born till now. Just how much of literally like a camera, like your head is a camera. And we just don't know who the cameraman is. We don't know if the cameraman is inside the camera or outside of the camera. You know? It could totally be like, you know, like the brain is like the camera held by another dimension. Do you know what I mean? Like the cameraman is in another dimension looking, you know? That's why life is first person point of view, you know? It's like, oh my god, there's multidimensional cameramen everywhere. That's nature is the ultimate command. It knows what man can never even communicate. Yeah. Find the freedom. Find the freedom that was here before the concept of freedom entered your mind. Pre-thought freedom. Seek pre-thought freedom. Anyways, guys, thanks for listening. I hope this episode was helpful. And again, I'm gonna say, anybody who knows who the artist is, please give a shout out. This artwork is incredible. You know. Now, the scary thing is, imagine there's a higher dimensional fisherman, and this kid suddenly sees a giant hook just out of the sky be thrown into the fish. You know. Anyways, guys, thanks for listening. Blessings.